Hi, my name is Terry. I'm Buddhist, and what I thought I would do for you is record a series on Buddhism for beginners. I have a lot of friends that ask me, what is Buddhism? What do you believe in? Some people know that it's a way of life. Well, what is that way of life? What does that mean? So what I thought I would do first is talk about what it's not. There's a misconception that Buddhism is a religion. Buddhism is not a religion if you think of religion as something to believe in. Actually, Buddha didn't get into that. I will get into today what Buddha did get into, what his whole purpose was. It was the whole philosophy is centered around what's known as the Four Noble Truths. And then everything branches out from there. So why it's not a religion, however, Buddha didn't get into is there a God or is there not a God. He felt that that was not central to what his purpose was. So what I thought I would do is just read a short passage about Buddha's stance on religion and God and the hereafter and that sort of thing. Basically, he felt that it was unwise reflection. There was really no purpose to it. So you could basically believe what you want with regard to that. You could be Jewish, Catholic, Christian of any type, Muslim, whatever you want to believe in or what you were raised in is fine. Because again, this is not a religion. It's not something to believe in. It's something to discover for yourself. So what did Buddha say about that? Buddha said, "What have I left undeclared? The world is eternal, I have left undeclared. The world is not eternal, I have left undeclared. The world is finite, I have left undeclared. The world is infinite, I have left undeclared. The soul is the same as the body, I have left undeclared. The soul is one thing and the body is another, I have left undeclared. After death, a Tathagata exists, a God, basically, I have left undeclared. After death, a Tathagata does not exist, I have left undeclared. After death, a Tathagata both exists and does not exist, I have left undeclared. After death, a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist, I have left undeclared. Why have I left that undeclared? Because it is unbeneficial. It does not belong to the fundamentals of the holy life. It does not lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana or nirvana. That is why I have left it undeclared." And that comes from the middle length discourses of the Buddha. You can see there's many. Middle length being stories about Buddhist teachings. Back then, everything was relayed verbally until people sat down to write down his teachings. Here I have a book, The Long Discourses of the Buddha. These are longer stories. Then there's a nice little book, the Dhammapada. It's one of the most famous sets of Buddhist teachings, very small. There's a lot of translations out there. Buddha was born in India. He was a man, actually, not a god. And he set out to discover what causes suffering, can I end suffering, how do I end suffering? And once he figured that out, he went across the countryside teaching what he had learned. And those are called the suttas or sutras. Back then, they spoke Sanskrit. Sanskrit was actually a language of the elite. So Buddha, because he wanted to relate to the common folk, spoke Pali, which is a form of Sanskrit, but just more the common folk, colloquial speech. So you'll hear words that are interchangeable, like Dhamma or Dharma, and that means the teachings. So the Pali word and the Sanskrit word. Same thing with the suttas or the sutras, Pali and Sanskrit. Just so there's words that will come up that as you start to investigate more about Buddhism that you'll hear. And it's all about the dukkha, or the suffering. So what is Buddhism? it's centered around what's called the Four Noble Truths, and I'll read them to you now. The first noble truth is the noble truth of dukkha. In other words, the noble truth of suffering. Suffering exists. I think we know that. But sometimes, so the teachings do go a little deeper, because sometimes we don't realize that we are suffering. So when we start to meditate, which is one of the practices in Buddhism, we start to see suffering at a more minute level, very subtle level. Second noble truth is the noble truth of the origin of dukkha. So in other words, Buddha realized there's a reason that we suffer. There's a cause for it, or causes. The third noble truth is the cessation of dukkha. In other words, suffering can cease. And the fourth noble truth is the way to that cessation of dukkha. There is a way that we can come to not suffer. And that way is the Noble Eightfold Path, which is going to be another recording in this series of Beginner Buddhism. So the nice thing is, because it's not a religion and there's nothing to believe in, a lot of people, depending on the religion that you were raised in, a lot of us are familiar with the concept of sin. In Buddhism, there is no sin. There's really even no good or bad. It's a question of, is every thought that we think, every word that we speak, every deed or act that we perform, the question is it skillful or is it unskillful? And what does that mean? Skillful means that this action leads away from suffering. Unskillful means that it leads towards suffering. Doesn't even necessarily have to bring suffering right now, but think of it like the domino effect. You do this action, well, it leads to this, it leads to that, and eventually down the line, suffering comes. So a lot of Buddhist teachings that you find in these books it's stories about things that come up in life, that we really have two courses of action, two courses of thought, two courses of speech. If we go this way, it leads to suffering. If we go that way, it leads away from suffering. And that really is the whole basis of Buddhism. So what's with all the meditation and, what's that about? Well, the way that Buddha found these things out at such a high level is that, the story goes, he sat for 40 days and nights under the Bodhi tree, where he became enlightened, and basically he saw what causes suffering. So meditation can help us do that for ourselves, because Buddha basically said, don't believe anything I say. Go and investigate it for yourself. And if it works for you, believe in it. And if it doesn't work, if it leads towards suffering, well, then you have a choice. You can either continue on that path, which would be considered unskillful, or you can stop and take a different path, do different actions, different words, different thoughts that lead you away from suffering. So the way that we arrive there for ourselves, not necessarily take Buddha's word for it, but if we start to meditate, meditation can be a lot of fun because you sit, and a lot of people think that it's, clearing the mind. Good luck with that. It's not about clearing the mind. It's starting to notice where our thoughts go. And then it's starting to get in touch with the feelings in the body. A lot of times that's a cue for us, if something's skillful or unskillful. Does it start to cause pain in the mind, certain thoughts? Or does it lead to peace? And we can see that on the meditation cushion or on the yoga mat, or when I first started meditating, I would sit in a chair in front of the computer because I couldn't calm my mind. I used to play music and try to calm my mind that way. So meditation helps us really see it rather than just read what Buddha tells us and take take it at face value. No, find out for yourself. So I think one of the recordings in the series is going to be on different ways to meditate, how to meditate, what it is. I'm not going to get into that today because I wanted to keep these short, 11 minutes or so, 11:11, auspicious number. So what I figured we would do just for today is just sit quietly for a few moments. So you can just sit up nice and straight to let the air be able to flow freely throughout the body. You can close your eyes if you wish, or just let them soften as you pick a point in front of you, about a foot in front of you to gaze at, and just start to focus on the breath, breathing in and out through the nostrils. As you breathe in, feeling the chest rise, and as you breathe out, feeling everything sink down, the shoulders, the chest, and start to become calm. And you can continue like that as long as you'd like. Namaste.